The Piri Reis Map. In 1929, a discovery at Istanbul's Topkapi Palace unveiled a mystery that would haunt cartographers for nearly a century. The Piri Reis Map, created in 1513 by Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis, emerged as a fragmentary window into an impossible past. Only one-third of the original survived, but what remained was staggering. The map depicted coastlines with astonishing accuracy, regions that Columbus himself hadn't fully explored, yet somehow appeared rendered with precision. How Piri Reis obtained this knowledge remains unclear. He claimed the map was based on 20 older source maps, some dating back to Alexander the Great. But the strangest detail haunts every scholar who examines it. The southernmost section appears to depict Antarctica without its ice sheet. Not the snow-covered continent we know today, but a mapped landmass with river systems and interior geography visible. Modern satellite imagery reveals what lies beneath Antarctica's mile-thick ice. The resemblance is unsettling. Some dismiss it as coincidence, projection of our hopes onto ambiguous lines. Others suggest that Piri Reis accessed cartographic knowledge from a civilization that mapped our world when the poles looked radically different. The parchment itself has been carbon dated to the early 1600s, though Piri Reis claimed to have created it in 1513. Either the map is a later copy, or someone has deliberately misdated it. Either way, the question persists. How did a 16th century Ottoman cartographer possess knowledge of lands no European would discover for centuries? The map still hangs in Istanbul, fragmented and incomplete, as if deliberately kept partial. Some fragments were lost, others supposedly seized during wartime. The complete original remains missing. If Piri Reis genuinely worked from ancient source maps, then someone had mapped the world with precision thousands of years before modern technology made such mapping possible. If the resemblance to Antarctica's true topography is deliberate rather than accidental, then either Piri Reis possessed knowledge centuries beyond his time, or the map documents something far stranger. A moment in Earth's history when the poles looked radically different than they do now. The map remains one of history's greatest unsolved cartographic mysteries. The Zeno Map. Between Greenland and Iceland, medieval maps showed an island called Frisland. It appeared on virtually every chart of the North Atlantic from the 1560s through the 1660s. Gerhard Mercator included it. Abraham Ortelius included it. John Dee, Queen Elizabeth's advisor, even preemptively claimed it for England in 1580. The island was so widely accepted that explorers actively searched for it. English navigator Martin Frobisher thought he'd found it in 1576. The problem was simple and devastating. Frisland never existed. The Zeno map, published in 1558 by Niccolo Zeno the Younger, was a hoax. Niccolo claimed to have discovered letters from his ancestors describing voyages to northern lands, including the discovery of Frisland. These letters were allegedly written centuries earlier by his family members. Scholars now recognize the entire narrative as fabrication, a deliberate invention designed to elevate the Zeno family name and retroactively credit Venice with discovering lands before Columbus reached America. The motivation was transparent. Venice's power as a maritime nation was declining. Spain, France, and England were ascending. A claim to discovery would restore Venetian prestige and historical significance. What's haunting is not the hoax itself, but its persistence. Despite representing pure fiction, Frisland remained on maps for over a century after its supposed existence. Sailors reported sightings. Some claimed to have nearly landed on it before weather turned them back. Cartographers copied earlier maps without verification, perpetuating a phantom island so convincingly that entire expeditions were mounted to locate it. The map demonstrates how authority becomes self-reinforcing. Once Frisland appeared on Mercator's map, its existence seemed confirmed. Every subsequent cartographer who included it added legitimacy. No one questioned whether previous mapmakers had actually verified its location. They simply trusted what they saw in print. When explorers finally charted the North Atlantic precisely, Frisland vanished not from any catastrophic event, but from the simple fact that no one could ever find it. It was erased not by disaster, but by discovery. The lesson is unsettling. A lie repeated often enough and printed on maps drawn by authorities can persist for generations. It takes not refutation, but exhaustive exploration to finally eliminate it. Freeland's long reign on cartographic documents demonstrates the power of inherited authority and the human tendency to trust printed sources above direct observation. The Boache Map. In 1739, French geographer Philippe Boache created a map of the Southern Ocean that has troubled historians ever since. The Boache map depicted Antarctica with astounding geographical detail, showing not just the coastline, but the interior topography beneath what we now know to be a mile-thick ice sheet. Some claim this proves ancient civilizations mapped Antarctica when it was ice-free, perhaps thousands of years ago. Others argue more conservatively that Boache was merely theorizing based on sparse explorer reports. The truth appears more mundane, but no less mysterious. Boache worked from fragmentary accounts of sailors who had ventured into the Southern Ocean. He synthesized conflicting reports into a cohesive landmass. Where gaps existed, he filled them with conjecture. The map itself bears French annotations. The words conjecturer and soupçonner appear over the southern continent. Conjecture and suspicion. These were Boache's labels for regions he could not confirm. Yet later, writers stripped away these annotations and presented the map as absolute knowledge, evidence of lost ancient maps guiding Boache's hand. What Boache actually did was remarkably clever for its time. He studied reports and deduced the probable shape of an undiscovered continent. He was right about many things. He correctly inferred the existence of Alaska and the Bering Strait. But he was also speculating boldly about a region no human had yet explored. Boache was the senior geographer in France working during an era of intense European exploration and cartographic advancement. His maps represented legitimate intellectual effort to understand the world based on available evidence and geographical reasoning. The Boache map reveals how easily cartographic theory becomes cartographic fact. Once a map is drawn, once lines define a space, that space seems real. Boache's conjecture about Antarctica became accepted truth within a generation. By the time explorers actually reached the continent, the map already defined what they expected to find. The annotations that marked his speculations were often ignored or forgotten. Instead, the map itself, the physical document with its confident lines and detailed geography, became the evidence. Did Boache discover Antarctica, or did he invent it? Perhaps he did something more subtle. He predicted it into existence by mapping what rational deductions suggested must be there. His conjecture became reality through the authority of the printed map. Hy-Brasil. West of Ireland, across the Atlantic, maps charted an island surrounded by perpetual mist. Hy-Brasil appeared on nautical charts beginning around 1325. It was supposed to emerge from the fog once every 7 years, then vanish again. Explorers mounted expeditions, resources were invested. The island was so convincingly rendered on maps that its existence seemed beyond question. Then scholars traced the legend backward through time. The original source was a fictional tale. Richard Head, an Anglo-Irish author, had invented the story of Hy-Brasil as part of his literary works. Yet the fictional island found its way onto supposedly authoritative maps. It acquired the weight of cartographic fact through sheer repetition. For nearly 500 years, Hy-Brasil persisted as a fanto, location. Ships' captains reported sightings. Some described interactions with robed figures living in the misty realm. One 1674 account by Scottish sea captain John Nisbet detailed his supposed contact with the island's inhabitants. Yet Nisbet was likely embellishing on a widely known tale, adding his own narrative to a fiction that had already acquired legendary status. What fascinates historians is not that Hy-Brasil was fictional, but that no one could definitively prove it didn't exist. The Atlantic is vast. Visibility is often limited. An island surrounded by mist would be difficult to locate systematically. Absence of evidence became absence of certainty. Ships would report potential sightings. Mapmakers would add the sightings to their charts. Future explorers would search based on those charts, expecting to find what previous maps had promised. The cycle perpetuated itself. A captain seeing fog and unusual waves might convince himself he'd glimpsed Hy-Brasil. That sighting, reported to cartographers, seemed to confirm the island's location on previous maps. Hy-Brasil was finally removed from maps in the mid-1800s when systematic exploration of the Atlantic became comprehensive enough to eliminate all excuses. The island vanished not because anyone found evidence of its non-existence, but because the world finally became known enough that fictions could no longer hide. Yet even today, some claim Hy-Brasil was real, a genuine island that eroded or sank beneath the waves before modern exploration reached those waters. The legend endures. Atlantis. In the 4th century BCE, Plato wrote about an island called Atlantis. He described it as a powerful maritime empire, technologically advanced and morally corrupt, which fell from divine favor and sank beneath the sea. Plato was writing an allegory. The story was fiction designed to illustrate philosophical principles. It was never meant to be literal. Yet for centuries, scholars treated Atlantis as a real place that had been lost. Mapmakers began placing it on charts. Some identified it with America, others with Scandinavia or the Canary Islands, or locations in the Mediterranean. By the 17th century, Athanasius Kircher created detailed cartographic renderings of where Atlantis might have existed. He drew it with such confidence that the map looked like documentation rather than speculation. The legend of Atlantis may contain kernels of historical truth. Some scholars propose that Plato's story reflects actual events, perhaps the volcanic eruption on the island of Thera around 1500 BCE, which devastated Minoan civilization on nearby Crete. A catastrophic eruption followed by tsunamis could have inspired stories of a civilization swallowed by the sea. But Plato's Atlantis became something far larger than historical speculation. It became a symbol, a repository for human longing for lost knowledge, for a golden age that never existed, for technology and wisdom that preceded our current age. Medieval writers received Plato's account from Arab geographers and accepted it as literal history. Renaissance thinkers attempted to identify Atlantis with actual countries. The Renaissance revival of classical texts elevated Plato's allegory from philosophical exercise to historical document in the minds of many scholars. Countless expeditions sought Atlantis. Fortunes were spent. Academic careers were built on its trail. The problem was that the more enthusiastically people searched, the more real Atlantis became in the collective imagination. Maps showing its location seemed to confirm its existence. Detailed descriptions seemed to document its reality. By the time modern archaeology developed tools to definitively prove or disprove Atlantis' existence, the myth had become more powerful than fact. Atlantis remains on no official maps today. Yet it endures in our minds as the greatest lost civilization never found, a phantom island more influential on human imagination than any real place could ever be. El Dorado. Deep in South America, Spanish conquistadors heard stories of a legendary city of gold. The tales originated with the Muisca people of the Andean highlands. When a new chieftain rose to power, he would undergo an initiation ceremony at Lake Guatavita. The new leader, called the Zipa, was covered in gold dust and carried golden objects and emeralds on a wooden raft to the center of the lake. There he cast the treasures into the water as offerings to appease an underwater god. This was a real ceremony. The gold was real. The ritual was documented. But somewhere in the retelling, the specific ceremony became confused with a phantom city. El Dorado, the Gilded One, shifted from meaning the ritual figure to meaning a place. A fabulously wealthy civilization supposedly hidden somewhere, in the Amazon jungle. The transformation from ritual to geography speaks to something fundamental about human cognition. We take the specific and transform it into the universal. One sacred ceremony becomes a hidden kingdom of gold. One lake becomes a lost city of untold riches. Explorers launched expeditions seeking the Golden City. Some vanished into the jungle and were never heard from again. Others returned broken, their resources exhausted, their dreams destroyed. The legendary city was never found because it never existed. Yet El Dorado remained on maps for centuries. Cartographers drew it in jungles and river valleys. Each map offered a slightly different location, as if the city itself was deliberately moving, staying just ahead of pursuers. In 1674, 2 Jesuits traversed the Essi, opposed location, and found nothing. In 1740, another explorer discovered only a small reedy lake where legends had promised a golden metropolis. By 1800, Alexander von Humboldt concluded that El Dorado was pure legend. He noted that local tribes used the word for any large body of water, suggesting that seasonal flooding had perhaps inspired exaggerated tales. Yet the dream of El Dorado persisted. It inspired colonization, exploitation, and the destruction of indigenous civilizations. The false promise of gold led to the genuine destruction of real cultures. In 2025, LiDAR technology revealed something remarkable beneath the Amazon canopy. Not a single golden city, but an extensive network of settlements. Roads, plazas, geometric mounds connecting dozens of major sites. A sophisticated civilization had thrived in the Amazon for centuries. It was built on earth and stone rather than gold, but it was real. The legend of El Dorado had been rooted in truth, but the truth was far more complex than simple tales of treasure. The real achievement was not gold, but survival, engineering agricultural systems in one of Earth's harshest environments. Saxenburg. In the South Atlantic Ocean, sailors charted an island called Saxenburg. It was described as a flat volcanic formation, and captains recorded sightings. Some even sketched the island from their ships. It appeared substantial enough to merit placement on maritime charts. Navigators planned routes around it to avoid hazardous shallow waters. Ships that supposedly passed near Saxenburg reported seeing smoking vents and rocky outcrops. The island was included on maps throughout the 18th century. Sailors described its volcanic cones and coastal features with specific detail. Then, gradually, no one could locate it anymore. By the 19th century, Saxenburg had vanished. Surveys found no rocks, no volcanic remnants, nothing. Had the island eroded entirely? Did it sink beneath the waves? Did it drift away on shifting currents? The honest answer is that we simply don't know. Islands can disappear. Coral atolls are fragile. Sandbars shift. Small volcanic islands can be consumed by the ocean in a single catastrophic season. A hurricane might have destroyed Saxenburg's visible features. An undersea earthquake might have lowered it beneath the waves. Volcanic activity could have weakened its structure until it collapsed. Yet the mystery persists because Saxenburg shouldn't have been on maps in the first place if it was so unstable. Multiple credible observers reported seeing it. Professional cartographers included it on charts. Did all these witnesses misidentify something else? A cloud formation, an iceberg, a mirage created by peculiar atmospheric conditions? The ocean plays tricks. Mirages are documented. Icebergs have been mistaken for land. In the pre-modern era, a ship's captain had no way to precisely verify coordinates. A sighting reported in good faith could be separated from the actual location by significant distances. But once Saxenburg appeared on a map, it acquired the weight of documented fact. Future captains saw it on their charts and expected to find it. Some may have convinced themselves they'd glimpsed it, adding their own sightings to the legend. The cycle perpetuated itself, each sighting reinforcing the island's presumed existence. Saxenburg represents phantom geography at its most poignant. An island that might have existed probably never did, yet managed to persist on the world's most authoritative maps for over a century. Perhaps it was a visual illusion that appeared only under specific atmospheric conditions. Perhaps it was a genuine island that truly did vanish. Perhaps it was simply never real at all. The truth remains as elusive as the island itself. Bermeja Island. Off the coast of Mexico, in the Gulf of Mexico, maps depicted an island called Bermeja. It appeared on charts as early as 1539 when Alonso de Santa Cruz included it. Centuries of map makers followed his lead. The island appeared on Spanish maps, British maps, French maps. In 1846, Henry Tanner included Bermeja in his authoritative map of North America. A phantom island on one map becomes reality through repetition. Cartographers trusted their predecessors. If Bermeja appeared on older charts, it seemed reasonable to include it on new ones. The practice created a self-reinforcing cycle of legitimacy. Bermeja persisted for nearly 5 centuries on geographical documents. It was shown in roughly the same location on successive maps. Then, in the late 20th century, a peculiar thing happened. Modern surveys couldn't find it. Exhaustive searches in 1997 and 2009 turned up nothing. No rocks, no reefs, no island. Bermeja had vanished completely. Or perhaps it had never truly existed at all. Mexico's territorial claims depended partly on the inclusion of Bermeja within its borders. If Bermeja existed, Mexico had a claim to additional ocean territory. If Bermeja was phantom, that territorial claim dissolved. The disappearance of Bermeja became politically significant. Some accused mapmakers of deliberate fraud, of including phantom islands to expand national territorial claims. Others suggested that Bermeja might have been a genuine geographic feature that sank or eroded away. But the timing is suspicious. Bermeja remained on maps until the precise instruments and satellite imagery made phantom islands impossible to maintain. Once mapping became comprehensive and verifiable, Bermeja simply ceased to exist on updated charts. Did Bermeja ever exist? Or was it created through the simple accumulation of copying errors and wishful thinking, persisting as long as the map-making process remained inexact enough to sustain it? The answer may lie somewhere between these extremes, a possible island confused with another location, or an error that achieved permanence through uncritical repetition. The Antikythera mechanism. In 1901, Greek sponge divers discovered wreckage from an ancient ship off the island of Antikythera. Among the debris was a device that should not have existed. Corroded bronze fragments, gears interlocking in patterns that shouldn't work, inscriptions describing astronomical cycles. It took decades to recognize what they had found: an ancient analog computer. The Antikythera mechanism is unlike anything else from the ancient world. It contains 30 corroded bronze gear wheels with teeth precisely cut to mathematical specifications. Modern analysis reveals that this device could predict astronomical positions decades in advance. It tracked the motions of the sun, moon, and all 5 planets known in antiquity. It could predict solar and lunar eclipses. It functioned as a mechanical representation of the cosmos itself. The sophistication is staggering. The precision required to construct gears with teeth only millimeters long, without modern lathes or manufacturing equipment, pushes the boundaries of what we believed ancient craftspeople could achieve. The mechanism combines cycles from Babylonian astronomy with mathematics from Plato's Academy and Greek astronomical theories. It should not exist. There is nothing else like it from antiquity. No ancient texts describe its creation. No archaeological record documents how it was built or by whom. The device appears fully formed, a complete expression of technological mastery that has no predecessor and no successors. X-ray computed tomography in recent years has revealed the inner mechanisms, showing a level of engineering sophistication that rivals early modern mechanical clocks. After the ship was lost, the mechanism vanished from history. No one built similar devices. The knowledge of how to construct such precision machines appears to have died with its maker. A map is a representation of geography. But the Antikythera mechanism is a map of the heavens, encoded in bronze. It suggests that ancient civilizations understood celestial mechanics with precision we're still struggling to comprehend. If such a device existed, what other technologies have we lost? What knowledge was buried in ancient wrecks waiting for us to rediscover what we once knew? The mechanism stands as a profoundly humbling reminder that technological sophistication does not necessarily advance in a linear fashion through history. Civilizations can achieve extraordinary technological heights, then lose that knowledge entirely. Lemuria and Mu. In 1864, zoologist Philip Sclater noticed something curious. Lemurs existed on Madagascar and in India, but not in continental Africa or the Middle East. How had lemurs crossed from Africa to India without leaving populations in between? Sclater proposed a solution, a lost continent called Lemuria, which had sunk beneath the Indian Ocean. This explained the distribution pattern perfectly. The hypothesis seemed scientific, reasonable, grounded in observable evidence. Lemuria was added to maps. Scientists debated its extent and exact location. Universities taught students about the sunken continent. The theory was presented as serious geological science. Then plate tectonics was discovered. Continental drift explained everything Lemuria had supposedly solved. Lemurs had evolved differently on isolated landmasses. There was no need for a phantom continent. Lemuria was quietly removed from scientific discourse and from maps, but Lemuria had already influenced popular imagination. It had inspired artists, occultists, and spiritual seekers. The idea of a lost continent was too compelling to abandon simply because science had moved on. Occultists renamed it. The mystical author James Churchward revived the concept in the 1920s, identifying a lost continent called Mu in the Pacific Ocean. Churchward claimed that Mu was the original motherland of human civilization. He published books claiming ancient texts documented Mu's existence and eventual destruction. The book sold well. People wanted to believe in lost continents, ancient wisdom, vanished golden ages. Mu and Lemuria existed on maps in occult and pseudoscientific literature long after legitimate cartography had discarded them. These occult maps were drawn with the same cartographic confidence as legitimate maps. Mu was placed at specific coordinates in the Pacific. Lemuria was mapped with detailed coastlines. The phantom continents persisted because they satisfied a psychological need. We want to believe that ancient peoples knew things we have forgotten. We want lost wisdom, hidden knowledge, maps leading to something more profound than our current understanding. Mu and Lemuria became symbols more than places. They represented humanity's desire to believe that somewhere, somehow, a greater truth lies buried beneath the surface, waiting for rediscovery. The appeal of lost continents lies partly in their inaccessibility. Because we cannot reach them, we cannot disprove them. They remain forever possible. The lost cities of the Amazon. For centuries, explorers believed the Amazon was essentially empty. Dense jungle, indigenous peoples living in small settlements, no great civilizations. Maps showed the Amazon as wilderness, unbroken forest without significant human geography. The Amazon appeared on maps as a blank space, marked with vague boundaries and empty interior. Then, in 2025, something remarkable emerged. LiDAR technology penetrated the jungle canopy and revealed the truth beneath. Thousands of geometric earthworks, roads connecting distant sites, plazas arranged with mathematical precision. The Amazon had not been wilderness at all. It had been home to sophisticated, large-scale civilizations for centuries before European contact. The maps had been fundamentally wrong in their most basic representation. Maps are not simple recordings of reality. They are interpretations shaped by observer bias, technological limitations, and cultural assumptions. European mapmakers encountered the Amazon and saw only jungle. They saw no cities because they were looking for cities in the European sense. Permanent stone structures visible from a distance. Massive walls. Obvious defensive features. The actual cities of the Amazon were built differently. Earthwork mounds, geometric plazas, soil modifications creating productive agricultural zones. All of these features become invisible beneath the jungle canopy. They only reveal themselves through modern scanning technology, forest management practices that created productive landscape while appearing natural. The implications are profound. How many other regions on our maps are fundamentally misrepresented? How much of the world that appeared empty and primitive on historical maps actually contained sophisticated civilizations that simply built differently than Europeans expected? The maps were not lies exactly. They recorded what mapmakers could see with their technology and cultural understanding. But that same limitation rendered invisible entire civilizations. The lost cities of the Amazon were not truly lost. They were always there. We simply lacked the instruments to see them. And if the Amazon concealed cities beneath dense forest, what other civilizations might be hiding beneath our current maps, visible only to technologies we have yet to develop? Conclusion. Across oceans and continents, across centuries of cartographic history, these maps and phantom locations reveal something profound. Maps are not neutral documents. They are interpretations shaped by observer limitations, technological constraints, and human desire. The Piri Reis Map suggests that ancient knowledge has been lost, that once we mapped worlds our current science cannot explain. The Xenomap and Hy-Brasil reveal how fiction can gain the weight of fact through repetition and authority. Frisland persisted on legitimate charts for over 100 years, simply because cartographers trusted previous maps without verification. Atlantis endures not as geography, but as symbol, a phantom location more powerful in imagination than any actual place could be. El Dorado drove civilizations toward conquest and destruction, fueled by a legend rooted in a real ceremony, but transformed into impossible myth. Saxenburg and Bermeja vanished not through disaster, but through the simple advancement of mapping precision. The Antikythera mechanism stands as evidence of technological sophistication that appears fully formed with no historical context. Lemuria and Mu represent our psychological hunger for lost wisdom and ancient knowledge. And the Amazon's hidden cities demonstrate that our maps may still be fundamentally wrong about regions we consider understood. What connects these cases is the thin boundary between knowledge and speculation, between documented fact and wishful thinking. Maps have power. They define how we understand the world. A phantom island on an authoritative map seems real. A fictional city becomes believable when cartographers treat it as documented geography. Throughout history, map makers have faced the same fundamental challenge: how to represent unknown regions. Fill them with speculation and the map becomes fiction. Leave them blank and the map seems incomplete. Different eras chose different solutions, and each solution left its mark. Medieval cartographers included phantom islands and shifted coastlines because they were mapping territories they'd never personally visited. Renaissance scholars drew continents based on travelers' tales and philosophical deduction. Modern cartographers benefit from technologies that eliminate ambiguity. Yet even our current maps reveal biases. Territorial disputes rely on cartographic claims. Political boundaries follow lines drawn by people with agendas. What we choose to map and how we represent it still shapes how the world is understood. Our current maps are vastly more accurate than historical versions. Satellite imagery and precision instruments have eliminated most phantom islands. Yet the question persists: what are we still missing? What regions do our modern maps fundamentally misrepresent through our own technological and cultural blindness? The maps of history haunt us not because they were wrong, but because they remind us that certainty itself is often illusion. The world remains partially unmapped, not geographically, but in understanding. We inherit maps created by others, never fully questioning whether those maps reflect reality or merely reflect the limitations of those who drew them. And somewhere in that gap between what we know and what we think we know, phantom islands still exist, waiting to be discovered or finally understood for what they always were.